I've always liked both the 2001 film and the 2007 musical adaptations of Legally Blonde. Who doesn't like the journey of its leading lady, Elle Woods, as she goes on her pink, campy, subversive adventure to discover her own brand of self-empowerment? We even went as far to do a video on MTV's A Search for Elle Woods a few years ago, where the judges ragged the girls on not being Elle enough.
I think we just need to see that bubbly, girly, feminine Elle that's LA and not New York.
Yes.
Well, as that show overconfidently explored, what does that even mean? What makes someone Elle Woods? As we can see in the movie and musical, Elle goes on a journey from an underestimated sorority girl whose main ambition lies in chasing her ex-boyfriend named Warner for marriage, who had previously dumped her for not being serious enough. However, still determined to be his wife, she studies hard with the help of her sorority sisters and follows him to Harvard Law School. It's here she discovers her true passion, worth, and comes out on top against the odds and judgments of her fellow student body, eventually outshining the entrenched faculty. If you asked anyone what defined Elle Woods, you could probably summarise it into 3 articles: positivity, passion, and her ability to form strong and meaningful relationships. At least it's set that way in the film and musical. However, Elle Woods did not originate on the silver screen, but rather in the pages of a novel. In fact, the original Elle was drastically different from the one that we all know and love. But does a novel also encompass the traits that we admire Elle for? Of course it doesn't. That's why you clicked on this video, as we will now review In a Case of Woods v. Woods. Let's get into it. Amanda Brown began the conceptual basis for Legally Blonde whilst attending Stanford Law School in 1993, where it was meant as a parody of her experience of law school and the people who attended it. Brown compiled letters, ideas, and daydreams from her experiences into a novel, which was at the time passed over by literary agents and publishing houses. However, Hollywood agents spotted its potential and turned it into the Reese Witherspoon serving that most of us know. And it must be said that most of the key scenes within the film are present within a novel, and so if you know the movie, then you'll be able to piece together most of the narrative within the novel, from the breakup scene in the restaurant, dropping the man she came to law school for, Brooke having a secret alibi which Elle uncovers and respects the privacy of, and Chutney's hair care interrogation leading to Elle succeeding in the case that she is interning on. However, whereas the movie and musical demonstrate Elle's strengths thoroughly in remaining true to herself, that is, as aforementioned, a positive, caring individual who discovers her newfound passion in law, the way that novel Elle carries herself through each story checkpoint is wildly different, and instead relies on a constant stream of cynicism, discrimination, and downright nastiness. As we will unpack throughout this video, Elle's journey is less of one of being true to yourself and more like being the worst person you know to reach the top, stepping over countless people to get there. But before I get ahead of myself, how did Elle come to be? Or rather, what were the experiences that Brown used as her basis? Brown stated that she decided to study at Stanford because both of her parents were successful lawyers, and that Stanford was close to a really great shopping mall. As she stated, "I wanted to go to Stanford when I saw the mall. I was like, Stanford Shopping Center. This is where I want to go. When I went for my interview, I checked out the Polo store, checked out Neiman's, so I became myopically focused." She also alleges that she didn't make friends in law school, stating in an interview that the women that she studied with were not women at all, but in fact were just angry people that she felt no connection to. I was in my first week of law school in 1993 and I saw this flyer for the Women of Stanford Law, so I was like, I'll go and meet some nice girls, whatever. I went to the meeting and these were not women, these were really angry people. The woman who was leading it spent 3 years at Stanford trying to change the name Semester to Ovesta. I started laughing, and I realised everyone in the room took it seriously, so I didn't make any friends there.
Take the word semester, okay? This is a perfect example of this school's discriminatory preference of semen to ovaries. That's why I'm petitioning to have next term be referred to as the winter Ovester. Excuse me.
In addition to not making friends, Brown stated that her studies were trivial. The school wasn't hard at all, it was the people, the most loathsome dose of antisocial disorder. It was like an anthropological study of the law school species, and since nobody talked to me, I had plenty of time to watch people and write letters. I was just writing letters to my friends to kind of amuse myself. I wonder why she didn't make any friends. So I think it's safe to say that the novel was written at a time where Brown felt despondent about her future in law. And so, Elle, meet your maker, as it's apparent that Brown decided to exact a type of vengeance upon the people as she described in this book. Anyway, it's time to move on to Exhibit A, positivity in our case of Woods v. Woods. In the movie and musical, Elle exudes extrovert positivity. Her optimistic outlook on her life, career, and relationships is one of the key drivers that allows Elle to succeed, even if it lands her into trouble at certain points. However, her happy-go-lucky nature is often a point of vulnerability for her in the beginning, as it's continuously looked down upon by her peers.
Hey, maybe there's like a sorority you could like join instead, like.
You know, if you had come to a rush party, I would have at least been nice to you.
Despite this, as she progresses and her nature ascends into a more mature, progressive energy, she still gives the people who laughed at her a second chance by the end and forgives them, even befriending them, which is seen as to her credit and dedication to maintaining a naturally friendly focus despite going on a journey as a character. Whereas in the novel, especially as its own standalone piece of literature, Elle is really hard to identify with. She's really mean and doesn't take us on a journey of empowerment, nor one of change. As an example of this, and our first piece of evidence against a friendly/positive nature, Elle constantly and distractingly mocks everyone's appearance. Even innocent bystanders don't escape Elle's judgment. Elle shuddered as the vision of his computer lab pallor, orange hair and long pimply neck invaded her thoughts. A whole gaggle of pasty-faced 24-function digital watch wearers jabbing about Deep Space Nine. The headband did nothing to disguise the fact that Claire had hair the texture of a Brillo pad. He often paired his scrubs with too tight t-shirts that he believed showed off his overdeveloped chest and disguised his short stature. He ran his fingers through his too black to be real and obviously blow-dried hair constantly, as if he couldn't get over his own beauty. The MIT/Caltech table was teeming with PowerBook flourishing techies and trekkies. The Smith table resembled a now convention of before candidates for beauty makeovers. A frizzy-haired brunette feminist with unshaved legs, a scrawny body, a unibrow, and huge rough hands. And I must say, Elle's viewpoints on what constitutes as beautiful is pretty shallow. So shallow that anyone she deems not to be a true blonde is internally discriminated against, which includes people like Madonna because she dyed her hair an icky black. But you must be thinking, surely she must change and develop as she learns more about self-worth. Perhaps she could start as this shallow person, but that ultimately gives a wider scope for her journey. Yeah. No. From beginning to end, novel Elle's cynical voice overlaps any cohesive character development that she has, both to herself and the world that she introduces us to. It's funny because I think the musical combated some of the material with the song Positive, where Elle and her inner monologue fight over the idea of potentially being violent and petty in reaction to bad news.
Keep it positive, as you slap her to the floor.
But more friendly driven Elle takes over by the end of the song. So if you've ever wondered about why Elle seemingly fights off pessimistic voices in her head in the musical, then it's likely because the book shamelessly exhibited those attributes. Also, as a fun note, the character that represents Enid also attends the costume party as Gloria Steinem, if you've ever wondered where that reference came from within the musical.
Are you actually calling Gloria Steinem a skank? Who's calling Gloria Steinem a skank? She is!
Objection!
Elle is friendly to some people in the novel. Fine, it should be noted that Elle does make one friend at law school with a girl named Eugenia, whom she mostly does have a friendly/positive relationship with. Even if it comes at the expense of laughing at others. I don't know, sorry, Elle scribbled back. I skip this class a lot to avoid falling gummy bears. She slid the paper over tentatively. Isn't that gross? I think I'll come early and stick a piece of gum on his seat, came back the response. By the way, my name is Eugenia. Eugenia really doesn't add much to the plot beyond aiding Elle in her hellish crusade in making everyone else feel insecure. She floats in the background when Elle needs a character to soundboard to, or she needs the notes from a lecture that she didn't attend. But can it be considered an example of positivity if Eugenia feels like Katie from Mean Girls and Elle is the Regina George? Especially if they don't move past this. It's like if Mean Girls just ended with Katie in the ranks and no one questions Regina's method of leadership. Graduation comes and Regina is still on top and everyone is just happy for her. Maybe that's just too real. But anyway, as a further example about a lack of change in any kind of positive or meaningful way, Sarah, Warner's new girlfriend, renamed to Vivian for the movie, goes through her own character changes. She takes up Elle's philosophy and dyes her hair blonde by the end, and also prioritizes going to a salon instead of going to class, which is seen as a positive change for Sarah to instead ditch her studies and focus on aesthetic beauty. As opposed to the movie where Vivian and Elle find respect through different methods and examples of working hard and working together.
We girls have to stick together. And maybe Warner saw a blonde who is sleeping her way to the top, but all I see is a woman who doesn't have to.
Novel Elle's cynical thoughts still manage to get digs on Sarah even at the end by stating about her nylon tights. I mean, the old ladies wear them to hide their varicose veins, but when you're young, what's the point? And unsurprisingly, this is the ending message of the novel. Don't be yourself. Be more like the most toxic person you know. But boy oh boy, we'll come back to Sarah in a bit because the sins committed against her are really, really bad. We will now be moving on to Exhibit B, Passion.
More passion.
So as we know, Elle's initial interests in law are mainly in getting back with her ex. As the musical puts it,
you came out here to follow a man. Harvard Law was just part of that plan.
However, as the story progresses, we watch as Elle's interest in Warner gradually fades, and with the help of a legal assistant / student mentor named Emmett, she is able instead to focus her energy from chasing a man to chasing a law degree. Along the way, she aids others with her legal knowledge, and in the musical, her motif about loving Warner is utilised again but in praise of her love of law and helping others.
Wait, was that law? Is this the point of law? I'm feeling kind of high.
Elle finds passion and is hurt when her professor assumes she is down for anything other than being taken seriously. In the novel, Elle does not like law. In fact, she never even goes through the montage of becoming a serious law student. She constantly reads Vogue in class, hates her fellow students / the faculty, and constantly skips class to go to a salon instead. Elle was engrossed in a magazine and winced when Professor Erie called on Ben to answer a procedural question. They would be in for another marathon of Ben Unplugged. Elle was glad she'd brought the new Vogue. Novel Elle doesn't have to work hard for what she gets, as she's sent cheat sheets and outlines via a secret angel, who turns out to be, drop the book shocking, a professor who likes the way she looks. You'd think maybe this would result in her questioning this, maybe progressing away as a character when she realizes this isn't perhaps a good thing. She could learn to self-study perhaps, maybe Eugenia could help her. So many possibilities, but no. In fact, by the end of the novel, Elle has a network of secret agents. Elle has a network of secret angels, Eugenia and Sarah, to do all of her work for her. Objection! Elle does have at least one passion. Fine, I'll allow it. Elle does have a couple of desires as a law student. One is to set up the BLDF, Blonde Legal Defense Fund, because as aforementioned, Elle constantly narrates that people are against her because she is blonde and beautiful, and that blondes are beautiful people who are treated as a minority due to stereotypes and jealousy. Her missive stating, its mission would be to combat anti-blonde discrimination in all its forms. At the same time, it would be a full-service law firm by and for blondes, providing positive blonde role models, focusing on community outreach in high blonde areas like beaches. The BLDF would take cases of brunettes who had been discriminated against, but only those who could be considered blonde at heart. Ironically enough, her missive is used to hate on anyone who isn't blonde. She even openly tells people pre-trial that Chutney committed the murder because she isn't blonde. Who is Chutney? Elle asked, eyes innocently careful to conceal that she already knew who Chutney Vandermark was. A Delta Gamma who, according to Margot, had a terrible nose job and was probably named after a spice. Oh, sorry, Chutney Vandermark. That's his daughter, who, by the way, is a year older than Brooke. Blonde? Elle asked the lawyer. I'm sorry, Christopher Miles asked, puzzled. Is Chutney blonde? Elle couldn't remember, and anyway, that could change. No, why? He looked at the pink homecoming queen with curiosity. Elle knew where her sympathies lay. Smiling, she announced, "Then I am perfect for this job." Brooke didn't do it. She didn't kill Hayworth Vandermark. He paused, surveying Elle with care, but skeptically. "Oh, how convenient. Do you also know who did it?" "Chutney did it," Elle declared, already on the side of wholesome blonde innocence. "His daughter? What makes you so sure, Elle?" The lawyer squinted at her. It was odd to accuse the victim's own daughter, and though Elle sounded certain, she didn't know any facts. "Chutney did it," Elle said again. Fight discrimination with discrimination, folks. However, it would be unfair to state that Elle does nothing for herself, because she also uses deception and betrayal to her advantage. In the interview for the internship, she decides to sabotage the student that went before her by stating, "I probably shouldn't say this, but the woman you just spoke to is a manic depressive. One day without her lithium and you don't know what could happen. I think this case might be too much for her." Which she acknowledges is a hurtful lie, but will give her leverage on the internship that she doesn't even want. She doesn't want it.
It's like when I was 7, I had this really expensive dollhouse from Germany, but I never played with it, so my mom wanted to give it to my cousin. But even though I didn't want it...
You begged your mom to let you keep it?
No, I threw it down the stairs.
To add pink Himalayan salt to the wound, in Elle's unethical plight to succeed, she goes on several dates with the guy that interviewed her, Christopher Miles, who is really the equivalent of Professor Callahan, as he owns the firm that she interns for. She even acknowledges how her dates with him have given her an additional leg up over the interns by stating, "They were both quite unaware that Elle had been to one deposition in LA and out to dinner with Christopher twice. During both dinners they had discussed the case in detail, and Elle felt she was gaining an edge on Sarah and the other interns." There's no conflict between these characters, and they have more of an implied romance as opposed to being used as a catalyst for demonstrating Elle's integrity or progression as a character. Christopher likes the way she looks, and that she can talk to his clients who find her attractive, or somehow, and I mean somehow, endearing. Elle ultimately wants to use him for supposed career possibilities, despite the fact she's more interested in creating a jewelry line than law. But anyway, they continue to date, flirt, and schmooze their way into each other's worlds for their own apparent gains. Brown's negative feelings on law found their way into the novel and unfortunately infiltrate the character of Elle Woods. So in between dates and appearance condemnations, we get passages such as, "The prize for law school success was this, an opportunity to slave away in a law firm library, researching obscure legal issues, performing a nervous twitch, and checking the clock in obsessive fixation on billable hours in order to make money for someone else, more specifically, a partner." Most classes in law school were an exercise in intellectual torture. Civil procedure laid out the ground rules for litigating cases in court. Anyone who could read and follow directions could understand civil procedure. You had to memorize concepts in order to bandy them around with other law insiders, or spit them back on exams, but beyond that, Elle reasoned, there was no reason to know the law by heart. The issue with these types of statements within the novel is that it contradicts Elle's narrative. If she's not meant to care about law when she is busy chasing Warner, then arguably she's supposed to care at least enough to win her case and move away from Warner. Without this, what exactly is Elle's goal as a character for half the novel? So these thoughts infiltrate the content, but for no real story-driven purpose, merely to put a bleak view on the practice of law that I guess Brown was feeling at the time. And that's an issue with the novel itself. There's too much venting going on that detracts from the plot. I get it, Brown. You didn't like law school, but did the semester Avesta thing really deserve such hostility? And one of my final points to the lack of passion demonstrated by OGL is that she openly holds disdain for students who are overzealous or passionate for law. So in a nutshell, she does not care for law, hating others who do, and cheats and schmoozes her way through it, and somehow we're supposed to believe she's competent enough to have her own law agency by the end of the piece. And now for Exhibit C, relationships. As you may have seen throughout this video, Elle isn't exactly the nicest person. In the movie and musical, Elle has a strong relationship with practically everybody and is able to utilise her relationship skills to benefit herself and others around her. When her world involved fashion, she used her sharp eye to help her sorority sisters when necessary. When it surrounds law, she uses her newfound legal knowledge to benefit and help others, but also to connect with her client, discovering her alibi while still protecting her privacy and still come out on top with strong relationship building being key to her success. As an example of positive relationship building, Elle meets a salon worker, you'll probably know her as Paulette, but in the novel she's Josette. In the movie and musical, Elle helps Paulette find confidence through teaching her skills to help her feel self-worth. She also aids her with her legal troubles that allows Paulette to transition from somewhat of a downtrodden character to one who is able to have more success in her life. In the novel, Josette, like many other characters, is just used as a mechanism for Brown to tell us that Elle wants to be back with Warner. Josette doesn't have a plot of her own and is merely there as a somewhat distant Josette doesn't have a plot of her own and is merely there as a distant service worker for Elle. She isn't used to demonstrate Elle's helpfulness or eagerness to perform law, and is probably just a fixture that was added by Brown because she was so myopically focused on that mall that she went to instead of her classes. Even the bend and snap doesn't exist in the book, but as a fun side note, the bend and snap was actually an addition from the movie script writers who allegedly were drunk in a bar and were trying to work out how to incorporate Paulette into the script a bit better. One of them suggested a dance move and performed the bend and snap drunk in this bar. Thus it was born, and for the better. Elle also criticises Josette in their first interaction together by thinking Josette's nail designs are tacky. Like, why is this necessary? Despite this, at least Elle does give some respect to Josette, unlike her dialogue with other service workers. She ordered grilled mahi-mahi with instructions that the fillet be accompanied by 2 lemon wedges and not be touched by 1 drop of butter. I mean it. If I see any butter, I'll send it back, she cautioned, requesting her salad dressing on the side. Her friends at home, Serena and Margot, don't escape Elle's tyranny either. From the very first page, Elle demonstrates that she doesn't really connect with them, or even really like them that much. She internally criticises the plastic surgeries they received from her father, who by the way is a plastic surgeon with the tagline, "Best for breasts." She views herself as above them. As an example, when Margot announces she's getting married, Elle lowballs the appearances and prospects of Margot's fiancé, Snuff, and instead of celebrating her friend in receipt of the news, chooses to think only of herself and her lack of success with Warner and school. She smiled more easily at the vision of Snuff, a twice-divorced record producer who was Margot's whirlwind summer lover and now fiancé. Elle cringed to hear that Margot was already picking up Snuff's record industry jargon. She'd make a good wife, functioning basically as a mirror for Snuff, who if not looking in one, was looking for one. When Serena called, Elle realised that even a stylishly loyally debut would play to no applause from the roving bon vivants she called her friends. Margot was speaking a language she had obviously overheard in some Viacom hospitality suite. However, the character I feel the most reason to sue is Sarah, or as you may know her, Vivian. Obviously they start off on the wrong foot, mostly due to Elle's own fault as she is the one looking to steal Vivian's boyfriend. But at least in the movie and musical she had some bite against Elle in response to her actions.
Face it, Bunny. One of these things is not like the other. Someday we'll nominate Supreme Court justices and you'll tan.
Novel Elle commits even more serious wrongdoings against Sarah, who really doesn't do anything to Elle in the novel beyond being the sin of being Warner's new girlfriend. Elle poked her friend when she saw Sarah enter the room. "Check out the power suit," she giggled, indicating Sarah's severe figure approaching in her navy Brooks Brother uniform with a paisley bow strangling her neck. "Hey, is this dress like your mother day?" Eugenia whispered. "Certainly not my mother," Elle laughed. This reaches a low when Sarah doesn't attend the costume party because she is mourning the loss of her family dog. Warner and Elle end up going back to Elle's house and end up making out naked on a sofa, then proceed to trash talk Sarah, who as you can imagine is at home mourning the loss of her dog. And this was an actual costume party, by the way. It wasn't a ploy to humiliate Elle as per the movie and musical.
Nice outfit.
Oh, I like your outfit too, except when I dress up as a frigid bitch, I try not to look so constipated.
This isn't the only example of Warner and Elle making out behind Sarah's back, but to put the cherry on top, Sarah and Elle end up becoming friends, where Sarah is expected to give up her work notes on property law, and Elle is going to turn Sarah into a fitness model. It should be noted that the multiple times that Elle makes out with Warner, including Naked Sofagate, never gets passed on as information to Sarah, nor is it anything that Elle addresses or, perhaps talks about as a regretful action. It's just completely ignored. I have to also add a note here that the ending page of the novel has Sarah and Elle discussing Sarah's newly dyed hair, sitting on the exact same sofa that Warner and Elle were naked making out on to draw the hellish image round to some additional malice. But anyway, Sarah's change to become more Elle-like is considered the good ending. Apparently, being more like the woman that your boyfriend is sleeping with is the message that we're supposed to take away. I mean, to be honest with you, the movie even struggled on how to end Legally Blonde, with the graduation ending being filmed at the last second in a different country, as Reese Witherspoon was filming somewhere else. But fun fact, the wig that she wears had to be flown in separately because Witherspoon had dyed her hair back at this point. But whereas that ending nicely wrapped up what we were supposed to be feeling, flown in wig and all, the novel feels almost scandalous. It's kind of like the ending of Chicago, where the evil duo kind of laugh in your faces for supporting and parading unethical and illegal choices. But at least they had the decency to warn you about it in the beginning. If this book wasn't written by a woman, I would have assumed it was written by a 45-year-old man in his basement trying to act as a teenaged girl. She wins her case, but only through unethical and very likely illegal activity. It's funny to think that the Elle in the original novel is actually the antithesis of what we would expect movie or musical Elle to be. And it's funny to draw that also back round to the search for Elle Woods, where the exact same qualities they were looking for in Elle didn't exist in the very fabric that was woven into the movie. Thank God for screenwriters, huh? The ones that can take manure-covered straw and weave it into gold. Elle Woods, you are found guilty of gaslighting, gatekeeping, and girl-bossing your way through law school. You have sent blondes back 50 years in time. And you, pervy professor, I don't even know what to do with you. Jail!